Hello, Joseph.
Hi there.
Thanks a lot for being on my channel today.
Of course, my pleasure to be here.
Could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Joseph Armstrong, and I'm a yoga asana teacher, yoga philosophy teacher, a proponent of recovery, sobriety, healing through yoga. I'm based in Miami, where I live with my husband, and we are running a yoga studio called Miami Life Center. And yeah, I'm happy to be here today. Thank you.
So how many times have you been to India so far? And when was your first trip?
Okay. So I have an awful memory, so I get confused about timelines especially. But I think my very first trip here was in 2009, somewhere right around 2009. And that was like 15-day tourism trip. It was my first trip out of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And
why did you choose India for that?
Because it was fascinating. Like, I wanted to visit somewhere very different. Like, I just feel like I have this curious quality to me. I always want to explore. Like, even when I was a kid, I was always testing the limits of how far away from home I could get. So I was exploring like the furthest reaches of my neighborhood, the woods around. And then when I got older and it was time to finally go abroad, I wanted somewhere that really seemed quite different from what I was used to. And even geographically, like on terms of like where we are on the map, like we're pretty opposite.
Yeah.
And this is hitting home now every time I come, because there's like a 10.5-hour time difference and I'm still working, and makes for some interesting meetings at 3 o'clock in the morning. But anyway, so yeah, 2008 or 9, somewhere in there was my first trip. And since then, I believe I've been a total of 5 times. Actually, this is my 6th trip.
Okay.
So I came in 2008-9 as a tourist. 2012, I came for 3 months, and I spent some time in Pondicherry and Oroville, and also here in Mysore. I came for 3 trips to Mysore to practice with Sharath, and this marks my 4th trip.
So collectively, you've been in India for about a year.
About a year, yeah, good math.
Nice.
Yeah, I've done this math too. It's about a year now.
Right. And what made you choose the path of yoga?
So, you know, I'm sober, and my sobriety is sort of like the cornerstone of my life, and my sobriety walks hand in hand with yoga. So, I spent a really long time trying to get sober, and I tried a lot of different things to get sober. And I didn't have like, I was going out and like just staying out a little bit too late. Like, I had really bad, like, burning down my entire life kind of addictive issues. And I tried everything. So I tried 12-step meetings, I tried recovery programs, I tried geographical changes, like moving from one town to another. But no matter what I did, I kept relapsing. And it was actually my 2nd trip to India, the one where I stayed here for 3 months, was a really sort of desperate attempt to like in recovery, we call these things geographics. When you, instead of like dealing with the inner problem, you do a geographic and you change where you are, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. So I did like the biggest geographic I could come up with. And I maxed out all my credit cards, and I went to stay in a reforestation commune, basically, down in Oroville. And the reason I was called to this place is because they have a philosophy of like no alcohol or drugs, right? That was part of like their doctrine, if you will. But while I got a lot out of being there about seva and like trying to be of service and community, I wasn't getting any of the deeper work. So I was still like sneaking out and drinking, right? So I would leave this place. Auroville isn't exactly close to Pondicherry.
Yeah.
So I would like leave. I would walk out to the main highway. I would catch one of the buses. I would go into Pondicherry and I drink. Sometimes I do this for lunch. Sometimes I do it like in the middle of the night. It was crazy. I was a crazy person. So when I saw that what I was seeking wasn't happening there in Auroville, I got online and I did a Google, and I searched for yoga teacher trainings, because somewhere in the path of my life, I went to my first yoga class, and it was at like I think the place was called Stroga, which is a combination of strength and yoga. But it was a fairly traditional class. It included some pranayama, and like it was a good class. And I knew immediately that there was something in it that could help me. So when I didn't get what I needed at the hippie commune, I decided that I should go do a yoga teacher training. And I ended up here in Mysore. And that was my first deep dive into yoga. So I did a month of like daily asana practice, daily breath work, some really intense breath work with a good teacher, meditation, philosophy study. And like, I think I knew then that this was the path my life needed to follow. But unfortunately, it would be a bit of a convoluted path for me to finally get to the place where I got sober and actually did the inner work of the yoga. So I guess what I'm getting at is that, for me, there had to be a very special combination of things in my life that helped me recover. And part of it was this really intense sort of soul searching of 12-step philosophy, and then it had to be supported by the inner work of yoga philosophy. It was only these two things in my life that were powerful enough to really create a change in me. So yeah, this July will mark 10 years since I got sober.
Nice.
And
congratulations on
that. It makes me really happy.
Yeah. Would you recommend other people trying to get over their addictions the path of yoga? And would yoga alone help, or does it have to be in combination with something else?
So this is a really individual question. Like, it's a little different for everyone. I would say that for the majority of people, yoga alone will not be enough. If you're dealing with pretty run-of-the-mill addictions, because the truth is we all live highly addicted lives. We're addicted to soda, we're addicted to information, we're addicted to relationships, we're addicted to everything around us, and this is kind of what yoga is all about. Seeing how these attractions and aversions cause the suffering in our lives, right? Being able to see that. But unfortunately, drug and alcohol addiction is a next level sort of thing, because it's not purely behavioral. It's not purely about choices. It's also biological. It's chemical. It's built around really deeply ingrained samskaras, like behavioral patterns that were programmed into me and into us in our childhoods, right? So in order to heal from a serious addiction, you need to be handheld by someone else who has recovered, by another addict who has recovered.
Right.
So while I trust Sharath to lead me down the road of yoga in so many ways, I don't think he's ever been a drug or alcohol addict, right? And this will go for any aspirant, any like guru-student relationship. you have to find who has what you want and get it from them. And sometimes this might be different people. So yes, yoga will help you get sober, but you're also going to need the guidance of a teacher. In recovery, we call them sponsors, but it's the same thing. You're going to need the guidance of someone who's actually kicked the habit. Otherwise, it's just it's so much harder. You need someone there who's done it, who you can trust. So yeah, most people are going to need a combination of approaches.
Okay. And this is your 6th trip to India, right?
6th trip, yeah.
Okay.
That's what we counted.
So what keeps you bringing back to India?
Okay. It's sort of just like instinctual. Like, I love being here. I love the people. I love the food. I love the energy of the place. You know, now the thing that like tells me I must come back is, of course, my yoga practice and my relationship with my teacher, right? So I come here to stay connected to the lineage that I care about, which has helped me, and to stay connected to the community around that lineage. So, you know, healing has to do with so many different layers, you know, but community is really pivotal to it. Like, there's this idea, this saying that I've heard that says that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? So if you spend time with liars, thieves, drug dealers, drug users, like, you're going to be averaged into that. But if you come to India and you surround yourself with spiritual seekers and people who care about honoring a traditional practice of yoga, then that's what you're going to be like. And that's what's important to me, right? So that's the core of it.
Okay. And in your 6 trips, have you had any memorable experiences that just make you feel full of gratitude for the country?
Yeah, of course. So, you know, a sort of touch point for me in landing here was seeing the Taj Mahal. Like, my very first trip, I went to the Taj, and I remember getting there and just being in front of its beauty, and like, I just sat down. Like, I sat down and I just like took it in for a good long while. I mean, of course, since then I've learned about the complicated history of the place and the back and forth between the local indigenous communities and various invaders. And I know it's a complicated history, but the place is beautiful, and it had a really profound impact on me in that moment. I've seen a lot of beautiful places, but I really think it is among the most beautiful. So I really enjoyed that. And this goes back to like my adventurer's, like explorer's heart, right? Because I just really enjoy seeing the world and the things that humanity has created. And I think that there's a lot of really beautiful, incredible things here. Yeah.
And have you had any unpleasant experiences?
I mean, I haven't had anything traumatic. Nothing traumatic has ever happened to me here. If I think of unpleasant, I mean, I can think of a couple of experiences where perhaps I got a little swindled or taken advantage of. You know, just recently we were driving. We were going to Vrindavan. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Vrindavan.
Okay. Vrindavan. And we had a really amazing experience there by the water with all the beautiful sights. And then our tour guide, we asked him to take us to the main temple, and he took us somewhere that was not the main temple. And it was this very sort of predatory situation where they showed us a bunch of widows chanting, and then this really ramshackle temple, and they kept asking very forcefully for money. And it just, honestly, I didn't even get it at first that it was a sort of con job. I was traveling with my teacher, Tim, and once they asked us a number of times for the money, I was ponying it up. In the end, I did give them money, but Tim was like, well, they're running a little bit of a game here.
Right.
So, I mean, but honestly, it's like, even that I didn't like take too seriously, it's just like, nothing has ever happened here that really impacted me in such a way that I thought, I shouldn't go there, or I'm never going back, Yeah.
So you're here in India with your husband this time.
Yeah.
So how has that experience been? Do you feel any discrimination from people here being a gay couple, or has it been smooth?
No, none. Not the first time has anyone made me feel any way. I'm not sure if people entirely get it. I think they do. But, there's this thing that happens also in the South where I'm from in the US where, for instance, for the longest time, my grandmother would say, where's your friend? And sometimes I get that here too. Like, I think that like our tuk truck driver knows our relationship, but he'll say, I'll be here at this time for your friend. I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. That's acceptable.
Right.
So, I mean, honestly, that is a bit of a microaggression, like, but it's the most innocuous of microaggressions, right? And sometimes these things are just out of ignorance, like it's just a lack of exposure, a lack of anyone like telling them that they need to have I'm talking about my family here, more so than the tuk truck driver. It was a product of no one telling them that they need to have a higher level of respect for how people live their lives. So until like I demanded it, he was just my friend.
Right.
But then once I made clear that like our truth needed to be acknowledged, because anything else was injurious to me, did that change, right? But I'm not going to demand that of my tuk-tuk driver.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you feel there's any inherent difference between the psyche of Indians versus the psyche of Americans? And if so, what is it?
Psyche of Indians versus the psyche of Americans.
I know everybody is different, but then like a country has a certain soul and people are slightly similar.
Yeah.
So that way.
I mean, things here seem, somehow people seem less uptight in a lot of ways than Americans, than Westerners. Like Westerners, like, I feel like we have very sort of almost strict expectations about how things should work, right? And I feel like here there's just a lot more sort of laid back, go with the flow kind of energy. I mean, but as for like deep psychological comparisons, I don't know. That's like the surface level thing that is always I'm aware of when I'm here. That things are just a bit more laid back.
Right.
Yeah. Does that make sense to you?
It does. And I heard a similar explanation from another person I interviewed a couple of weeks ago. He also said, like, in the West, people expect things to be in a certain way. And if it's not, then they get worked up.
Yeah.
And even if something new is introduced, they take a while to integrate. Whereas he was like, Indians are more fluid, they're open, they flow like a river. If something is coming their way, they just take it and then they flow. Yeah, and I feel it is a bit like that.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's nice to sort of surrender into that every so often, and to try to not just be agreeable to it, but to participate in it.
Yeah. And my last question, no, I have a few more, but one of the last questions, how would you define yoga?
So for me, yoga has been about creating a sort of therapeutic tension within myself that allows for healing, And I used to say this a bit more bluntly. I used to just say that yoga is a process of creating stress so that we can release it. And sometimes that would sort of set people off because it doesn't have anything to do with like the higher powers or the metaphysics. It's just about like perhaps my experience of it, right? But for me, none of those other layers of studying yoga are accessible until I'm able to undo all the knots that keep me bound in bad habits in the first place, right? So for me, it's really about that process of creating a little stress so that I can let it go in a therapeutic way. So I mean, if you do want to put that in like some yogic terminology, I would say that for me, like the aspect of like tapas, of like creating that fire that burns away the parts that are less useful. That's what really resonates with me in yoga. Right? So I try to really tap into the parts that I know have been profound in my life, that I know have had a measurable effect in my life, and to really sort of build my practice and my understanding of yoga around that.
So I'll ask you some questions about Mysore and about India. So if other foreigners are coming to Mysore, what would be one place that they have to visit?
I don't even know. Like, it's so hard to like boil down to one place. You can
give 3.
Okay.
Your favorite, like if people are here for a day, what would you recommend that they should not miss?
So I love the Mysore Palace. I think it's so beautiful. It's so beautifully designed. Especially if you can catch a night where it lights up and it's just like so enchanting. So the Mysore Palace is awesome. For me, it's going to be, my life revolves around food. I'm such a foodie. So you're going to want to find like some of the delicious restaurants around here.
Could you recommend a few?
Yeah, like I've been eating a lot this season at SPR. I really love their food. And they have great breakfast. They have a great thali for lunch. I just really love that. And then finally, actually, no, one more thing about food. One of my favorite things to do here is actually to get connected into like cooking classes and in-home cooking experiences. So there's some people here who will invite you in. They'll show you their process for cooking, or they'll just host you for breakfast or lunch. I feel like those things are really special for getting to know the local community. And then, of course, yoga. Like, you need to do some yoga here. So I come to practice with my teacher, Sharath Joyce. And if you're not already practicing in the Ashtanga Yoga lineage, you can practice at the same shala with Usha or the other teachers there. So, yeah, see some of the sights, eat the food, do the yoga.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks a lot, Joseph.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was so nice.
Yeah, it was so nice. And your answers were so good.
Thank you.